Audiences for 30 years talking about drugs. And I often start my presentations with an apology. Specifically, I apologize for the lies of past drug educators, including myself. And I acknowledge that we've told 3 lies. We've exaggerated the harms of drugs, we've never acknowledged the benefits of drugs, and we've never talked about the dominant model for controlling drugs in our society, which is drug prohibition, which has failed us all so badly.
Drug prohibition, if you guys don't know what that means, prohibition. Drug prohibition basically just says don't do drugs. And that's been our predominant model for making people not do drugs, is just to, there was actually, this was a slogan that was propelled by, I don't want to get this wrong, but someone that says just say no to these things. And while I would encourage you to just say no if you're offered something, he's going to talk about how that can, have you ever been told, hey, don't touch that if you're like interested in something, and all it does is make you want to touch it even more. All it does is make you more curious about it. So culturally and psychologically, being told not to do something will make you question why. And then in order to answer that question, you might be curious enough to try something. So he's going to say how there needs to be maybe a new model introduced.
Now, for much of my career, I've talked about that last point, talk about the failure of the war on drugs. But today, I'm going to talk about the benefits of drugs. Specifically, I'm going to talk about psychedelics.
Psychedelics are hallucinogens.
Now, psychedelics have been around in human culture since before recorded human history. And we can see at least 4 communities, cultures today that have woven the psychedelic experience into the fabric of their culture. There's the curanderos use of psilocybin mushrooms. There's the ayahuasca use in the Amazon basin. There's the huichol use of peyote, and the shamanic use of Amanita muscaria.
Okay, so what he just did was he listed 4 different types of hallucinogens, or psychedelics, as he said, and the 4 different cultures that use these 4 different types in their culture. So it's very important to understand that our culture is different, right? The way that people use psychedelics in our culture recreationally is a lot different. It has a different intention, a different value, a different goal than the way that these cultures use it. But maybe we can learn something from them.
In Siberia. Now, on the surface, how the container of safety is created with these cultures, with this psychedelic experience, is all different. But if you look at how the experience is integrated into the culture, it's actually quite similar. They're used for healing, everything from psychological to physical issues. They're used for celebration of transitions, everything from seasonal changes to puberty rites. And they're used for spirituality, to connect the individuals and the culture to the cosmos as a whole. If I wanted to use one word to describe that, what I would say is the word would be pro-social. Psychedelics have always been used to connect people to their culture and to the universe. So it was historically unprecedented what happened in the 1960s when psychedelics got linked to an antisocial message. It had never happened before. Tim Leary said, tune in, turn on, and drop out. And the subsequent social backlash has caused immense human suffering, and it goes on today.
Timothy Leary was a psychologist at Harvard, and he actually worked with Richard Alpert, who is the person I'm going to tell the story about after we watch this. And he was given synthesized magic mushrooms, which is called psilocybin. And he took so much of it that he thought he started professing grand things like, college was not useful, and everyone just needs to take this and drop out of school, etc. And of course, he got fired, and then it began this like wave of how these drugs are harmful to people. They're gonna, detract from society and quit their jobs and etc.
And admittedly, there were some other cultural issues going on at the time, but certainly that disconnect message was profound. And the media participated in the spinning of the web of illusions. LSD-fed ape rapes TV actress. LSD made me a prostitute. Girl gives birth to frog. And even the science of the time was suppressed. For 40 years, scientists couldn't do what they needed to do, which is measure stuff. Now, can I think of any other time in human history when science has either been suppressed or criminalized?
Okay, so, sorry, I'm going to keep doing this, but when we're in this state of prohibition where we say, like, okay, just all of these things are bad, we can't do them anymore, like, everyone just say no, stop doing it. But we do, on the other hand, see them being used in a beneficial way with these other cultures. But if in our society we're not exploring them to be, to use them in a healthy way, say, then what he's saying is that we can't measure it, we can't collect data, we can't figure out how to use them appropriately. So then what we get is we get a cohort of people who are not using them, okay, and they might be relying on the drugs that are available, like prescription drugs or their doctors to give them something, right? But then we have another cohort of people who are using them recreationally without much data, without much information. They take them, they experience their own experience. They're like, oh man, I don't feel this pain anymore, etc. Or whatever their perception changes to, and then they can be irresponsible with that. So it's like, I think you guys get it.
Well, as a matter of fact, I can. In 1616, and then for the subsequent 143 years, the science of the telescope was banned. It was illegal for people to report what they saw through the lens of the telescope, specifically that the Earth was not the center of the universe. LSD is to the study of the mind what the telescope is to astronomy and what the microscope is to biology, according to Stanislav Grof. Well, psychedelics are back. This is the Canadian Medical Association Journal, the conservative voice of Canadian medicine, with a number of articles exploring the psychedelic renaissance, the explosion of research that's happened in recent years. And that's really what I want to talk to you about. But to be really clear, what I'm talking about here is skilled, trained, competent professionals using pure substances in ways that are well supervised. I'm not talking about impure street drugs used by unsupervised, irresponsible adolescents.
That would be you guys.
So how do researchers think about psychedelics these days? Because they break them into three categories. The first are the classics: LSD, mescaline, dimethyltryptamine, and psilocybin. And these offer researchers a variety of attributes that are worthy of investigation. For example, spirituality. Now, it's kind of neutral spirituality because Buddhists find the Buddha, Christians find Christ, and atheists and agnostics find the entire universe. And this particular aspect of these medicines is quite useful for situations like end-of-life anxiety.
Here's one benefit.
When we are dying and we're anxious about the experience, and we take a dosage of psilocybin and we meet our maker.
Psilocybin, remember, is the active compound in magic mushrooms. That's the psychoactive compound. And when he's saying meet our maker, he's saying meet our version of God.
And we're told it's okay, we can relax. We're just coming home. It tends to reduce the stress of that transition. The classical psychedelics also offer a disorientation of the ego, which can be very helpful in things like treatment for alcoholism.
Okay, so what he just said is that psychedelics can help break down your idea of yourself a little, right? To help in the treatment of alcoholism or other addictions. That's my dog. Sorry. Now, I want you to imagine some child or young adult taking it, or even anyone taking it recreationally at a very high dose. Your ego, remember, is a sense of your sense of who you are, right? Remember, this is Sigmund Freud. We have our id, our superego. This is like our devil and our angel, and then our ego is the one who listens to both and makes decisions. So dissolving the ego, if you take without supervision, young, you're just experiencing this, and you take a high dose, which is not a lot, and your ego dissolves, and you are so young that you don't even know who you are yet. You haven't really gotten in touch with all the aspects of yourself. That can, I want you to understand that can be a pretty big negative. The person that you see yourself as, that hasn't even developed yet, and now you're dissolving that. And some people have had to felt like they had to start all over with their identity or their personality to get in touch with who they are. So I'm just saying culturally, right, the way that it's used in our culture, that can be one negative aspect as well when you are not using it under the supervision of a medical professional and with a medical dose, right? So just keep that in mind.
They also increase the permeability between the unconscious and the conscious mind. They allow us to have access to our unconscious in a way that we don't normally. Now, if you really think about the human experience, a lot of our lives are lived unconsciously. For example, driving a car. Our conscious mind is thinking about the radio and what we're going to have for lunch and the conflict we had with our spouse or whatever. We don't think about our feet. Our unconscious mind is driving the car. We live our lives with lots of tape loops that just happen automatically. And if something bad happened to us in childhood and it's replaying itself consistently in our adult life and causing problems for us.
What he's referring to is that if you experience something negative in childhood and you can find yourself encountering that same kind of situation in adulthood as a pattern. So not like you're just reliving it in your head over and over, although that can happen. But it would be like someone growing up in an alcoholic family, and then everyone they date turns out to be an alcoholic as well, or they find themselves attracted to the same things that gave them problems early on, because supposedly they haven't addressed it, and in order to move on from it. So he's saying that psychedelics can help bring those things to the surface to address, say in therapy.
It's very hard to access because it's unconscious. Psychedelics can help with that. Psychedelics also offer, the classic psychedelics offer what I call the portal effect, which is the wow, that was incredible effect. It's a bit like climbing Mount Everest or graduating high school. You have a sense of accomplishment and transition. And that's very helpful in many conditions. The second group of psychedelics are the empathogens. 3-MMC, MDA, MDMA are examples.
I didn't realize that MDMA was a psychedelic. MDMA is, so I think I put that as a stimulant in our previous lesson, but I guess it is a psychedelic, so that on the street name for that would be Molly, okay? And some people refer to it as ecstasy, although ecstasy is absolutely not. Ecstasy is, when you get street ecstasy, it is a conglomeration of a whole bunch of different things that you have no idea what's in it. And you guys can know what dangers would lie by taking something like that. But MDMA, it's like methyl di something, is Molly, and well, he'll talk about it.
And what they do is they bond people and increase empathy. And that's really useful to bond a therapist to somebody who wants some help. That connection is really important. It could be facilitated with these medicines. They also take away fear. So if a soldier who's been in battle in Afghanistan comes back to North America and is replaying that trauma again and again, normal therapy can't access it, partly because it's unconscious, but partly because if anything that gets close to it has a huge fear response. And MDMA specifically takes away that fear and allows the take to be reworked. It appears that MDMA-assisted psychotherapy may be the best treatment for PTSD.
He said MDMA-assisted psychotherapy is the best treatment for PTSD, which is post-traumatic stress disorder. So if you've experienced trauma, after you've experienced trauma, there is a lot of symptoms that come with that. And what he's saying is not that MDMA or Molly heals that, but that MDMA-assisted psychotherapy. So that means a psychotherapist, so a therapist, prescribing MDMA in one session. So they're laying on the couch, they take the MDMA, the therapist is there, and then they're talking through and having a conversation, because that drug allows that patient to reduce their fear and open up. So then you can talk about things.